God is in you. You are two people in one. You are a physical entity, but you are also a metaphysical entity. Now, your physical self has everything to do with your body and the condition that your body is in. A body can be reconditioned in a way that cuts cuts himself off from his metaphysical state, which is the very thing that pertains to his mind. God deals with the metaphysical self. You could say spiritual, divine, however you cut it. Okay. Now, your spiritual self deals with your physical self. And the way that your spiritual self deals with you is through your nature, um, which has everything to do with how you express yourself as an individual based off of you being two people. It's kind of tricky. Like your body is performing for two. Okay. One takes care of the visible aspect of your life, and the second you, or the double you, the witness that goes to God, deals with the invisible, um, uh, the principalities, the powers and high places or whatnot. So um, God deals with your metaphysical self through your mind. Um, and through your mind, it guides your body. He guides your body. It is very important that we condition our minds to be strong, not prideful or arrogant, um, but just healthy, idealistic, logical. Um, God does not want the mind to be in a place where it can be easily programmed in a way that the behavior of the body becomes predictable. Um, he thinks that that is counterproductive to our nature, which at the end of our nature, it just goes back to uh, the beginning, which is the freedom of expression. That's why, if you were ever put in a position or condition where you could not express yourself freely, you would assume your biological nature, which is the same thing as your physical self, um, uh, almost trading places with your metaphysical self, your spiritual self, uh, through your mentality. You would get the mentality where, like, hey, I'm being prevented. I should be allowed to pursue, based off of these principles, the invisible aspects of our life. Um, um, and not only are you acknowledging that, but you are physically feeling the resistance of being impeded upon. And that is what your metaphysical, that is what your mentality deals with. Your mentality deals with everything in this life that limits you, you know? That's why when everything is a go, you're not thinking. But the minute somebody says stop, you start to think. As a consequence, that's why systems are in place, not to necessarily impede you physically, but to impede. It's very tricky because they don't impede you physically. They impulse you physically. They put on the appearance that this is a free interstate, a free enterprise, land of the free, but we are, you, me, everybody, we're subjected to these invisible limits. And I need you to know that these limits exist to keep you divided from yourself. The last thing that your enemy wants is for you to be single minded. When I say single minded, I mean your body and your mind unifies. Therefore, the heart is in the right place. When the heart is in the right place, immediately you start looking at the supervisional aspect of your life, the overseeing dominance, or that powerful domain that exists or whatnot, and then we begin to challenge it, and we understand that power is essential to progress, but if power uh, impedes our natural growth process, while at the same time um, building up a society uh, in which is appearing to be freeing, but at the same time limiting our growth based off of our intellect, our ability to think logically for ourselves, and not just to mirror our society and predict in uh, in the fashion of what can be predicted. That's not why God created us. God created us to be our own governments, our own to be able to determine for ourselves what is good and what is not good based off of our nature, not as a whole, but as an individual. Because when the individual can determine uh, by his own expression, that's the only way I can, by his own passion, by his own desires, by his own ambitions, then that person becomes an individual driving force. Uh, and when that individual driving force unifies with other people who exhibit the same behavior of ambition and that driving force, what you get is a strong-minded society. It's not that one can think logically. No, we all think logically, kind of like the military, like before you're a doctor, you're a soldier, or before you're a colonel, you're a soldier. Before you work in the medical fields, you know how to pick up a gun and point it and do some harm. You're a soldier first. Well, in God's army, you are, instead of being a soldier or whatnot, you're a servant first. You know, uh, we serve ourselves first. We serve ourselves first, so that way we can value the importance of our own independency. So we don't have to be dependent on anybody, which in essence frees us, giving us the power uh, to worship or to acknowledge God for his singularity. Um, but when we are just being a body and we refuse to think about our own life and what we want and all the stuff that we have to give up just to make simple things possible for others, while we live off of this damning hope of that we're going to get ours. Well, it's dangerous, because as long as we are just being a body, being impulsed easily, we are cut off from our evolutionary progress, which is to be intellectuals, to be able to objectify our circumstances and think rationally at all times, and not just be fearful, not be, victims of superstition. and stereotypes, hate that is based off of mythology, that one is better than one. No, one has always equaled one. And so any idea that puts the body in contrast of that spiritual or that metaphysical property does not serve you justice. Um, it is a militant tactic used to divide and conquer. God, I mean, your prophet said it. He said, you can't say that I'm working for the devil, because a house divided cannot stand. If I'm preaching against, if I was working for the bad guy and I'm preaching some stuff that exposed the bad guy, how can the bad guy evolve? Okay, well, hold on. Well, your enemy knows the book a lot better than you. And so what he's done is he's twisted that into making you the bad guy, while doing everything in culture to make you feel good about being the good guy. So then we have this whole society that is, in essence, in odds with themselves. And that's what's going on. Until we get to the point where we put one and one together, when we put our physical nature and our spiritual nature together, we have to ask, hey man, I've been living so long, what makes me happy? What do I want for my life? Instead of just going along for the sake of going along, for the sake of perpetuating an agenda that puts people at a disadvantage from their own country, to the point where the deaf, the mute, the sick have more compassion than the well people, who in essence might be living an abundant life but are spiritually sick. I'm going to leave you with this. Just something for you to ponder. So a man can be rich. He can own a lot of boats, a lot of cars. He can be the CEO on several different corporations, have a lot of money, travel, uh, but could be considered to be at a low grade in spirit. While there is a poor man who cannot travel, and he does not have a lot of money to his name, and he works real hard just to survive, and has never been outside of his state, lives off of imagination and hope, but in God's eyes, he is at a higher grade, because the rule of the Spirit, which is that the Spirit always comes from a high place to go to the lowest place on earth, to stand as high as possible. And that is what it means. He says, as above, so below. This is the above. This is the below. This has to come together. The same thing when your prophet walked on them waters. He was walking on a still heart. See, when the heart, I'm not going to get into that.